All right, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Akeem, and welcome to this vlog. Here to give you some last-minute tips for Week 5 of the 2015 fantasy football season. I'm going to talk about each individual position for your respective teams in fantasy play for this week. Starting with the quarterbacks, had a couple of questions about two particular players. Starting with Joe Flacco of the Baltimore Ravens. Some people had questions for him and used him as a sleeper against that Cleveland defense. Now, the game is at home, so the momentum can go into Baltimore's favor because they have the home field advantage. But Steve Smith is not going to be playing in this matchup, so he's going to have to rely on other players like Marlon Brown as well as Carmar Aiken, who had led the team in receiving last week at Pittsburgh. He had a decent game, I think 95 yards and a score. He's a player that you could possibly use as a sleeper in this week, but I don't think you should go right ahead and start Joe Flacco this week. He is a good quarterback and he can pickpocket his wide receivers, but I'm not really sure and confident in the depth and the performance of the receivers for this upcoming week. We don't really know what we're going to expect, so I think you should bench Joe Flacco this week and see how he performs. But in most people's draft case boards, they don't even have Joe Flacco as a top 10 quarterback to use this week. Next up, Peyton Manning of the Denver Broncos. Now, he is having a little bit of a struggle this year at quarterback due to the lack of effort in the offensive line. The protection has not been playing up to par this season, putting more pressure towards Peyton Manning. Also, they've been lacking running the football effectively this year as what they wanted to with C.J. Anderson and even Ronnie Hillman. Now, Hillman did have a big 72-yard touchdown run last week, so possibly they could get things going this week against the Oakland Raiders. But Oakland is pretty weak against the pass, and they actually are fifth. They give up the fifth most points to quarterbacks in fantasy play. Go right ahead and give Peyton Manning another shot this week. Headed over to the running back position, Dion Lewis of the New England Patriots. I think he's a must start this week. The Patriots are actually playing against the Dallas Cowboys, who have actually allowed 4 receptions towards running backs for the past weeks this season so far. And Dion Lewis did sign a 2-year contract extension to stay with the team, so that means that Coach Belichick is definitely going to use him more as a weapon offensively, like he had used with Shane Vereen and company. And let's not forget about LeGarrette Blount. These two players are still going to be splitting carries, but I think you should go right ahead and start both LeGarrette Blount and Dion Lewis this week, because Dallas has actually allowed the third most fantasy points this season. Next up, Chris Johnson of the Arizona Cardinals. Now, he's been playing well to fill in for Andre Ellington for the Cardinals, but Ellington should be back this upcoming week, and this is going to be very interesting. I think that you should bench Chris Johnson because we don't know how the bulk of the carries is going to change far out. And let's not forget about David Johnson, who has been a great third down back and even a receiving type running back for the Arizona Cardinal offense. Latavius Murray of the Oakland Raiders. Now, he's dealing with a shoulder injury. They're playing against the Denver Broncos. This is going to be a little bit of a scare, but I know that this is a tough Broncos defense. They do great against the run and running backs. I think you should go right ahead and start Latavius Murray for this week because he's such a strong running back. He is going to be very useful. He did have a 100-yard game a couple of weeks ago. I think you should go right ahead and use him as a sleeper, deep sleeper against that Denver Bronco defense because he's going to be needed, and they have the home field advantage as they host the Denver Broncos. Lastly, of the running backs, Todd Gurley of the St. Louis Rams. He exploded last week, and he showed his great skills against the Arizona Cardinal defense at Arizona, averaging 7.7 yards per carry, 146 yards on the ground. He didn't score, but I think he will score against the Green Bay Packers this week. Headed over to the wide receiver position, there are some concerns about Julio Jones with his toe and hamstring injury, but he has been dealing with injuries during the season and even during his career, and he has still exploded. He is going to be the top wide receiver against the Washington Redskins, who is a little bit weak on the secondary. I think Jones will have a good game. Go right ahead and start him. Keenan Allen of the San Diego Chargers. Now, the reason why I received question marks regarding him is because of the return of Antonio Gates, and Philip Rivers and company is definitely going to look to throw the football towards Antonio Gates' direction. He's coming back from suspension. That means less targets could possibly be taken away from Keenan Allen. But Allen is still having a great season thus far, and he is the #1 receiver for this team. I think you should go right ahead and start Keenan Allen against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers have a good secondary. Next up, Travis Benjamin of the Cleveland Browns. They're playing against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I think that the Ravens are going to have a good game, but they are weak in the secondary, and they actually have allowed the second most points to wide receivers in fantasy play this year. Now, I think Travis Benjamin is a must-start this week. I think he could give you at least 13 points against that Ravens defense. Now, he doesn't really get a lot of receptions, but he is leading the team in targets. I think you should go right ahead and start Travis Benjamin. Even he's still having a decent season, even with the switch of quarterbacks with Johnny Manziel and Josh McCown. Lastly, Pierre Garçon of the Washington Redskins. Now, Jordan Reed should be out for this matchup, and Deshaun Jackson is still shaking up with injuries. I think that Garçon has to be a sleeper this week against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Falcons did have a great defensive effort last week against the Houston Texans, and they're possibly going to do the same this week. But Pierre Garçon did have the game-winning touchdown last week against the Philadelphia Eagles. And like I said, Jordan Reed should be out. That means that Kirk Cousins and the quarterbacks are definitely going to throw the football more towards Garçon's direction because he is the top #1 receiver. Headed over to the tight end position, Martellus Bennett of the Chicago Bears. Go right ahead and start him this week. He is a must-start. Alshon Jeffrey still dealing with a little couple of injuries, and Jay Cutler is back, but they don't really have too many receivers. Eddie Royal is going to be out as well, so they're going to depend on Marquise Wilson. Actually, they're going to depend more on Martellus Bennett. He's a must-start this week. And I mentioned earlier about Antonio Gates. Go right ahead and start Antonio Gates for the tight ends. Lastly, for the tight ends, Owen Daniels of the Denver Broncos against the Oakland Raiders. Now, the Raiders that have actually allowed the most points to tight ends so far this year in fantasy play. Peyton Manning definitely is aware of that, and he will throw the football towards his direction. And he is coming off of back-to-back touchdowns in the 2 consecutive games. I think you should go right ahead and start Owen Daniels this week. Lastly, the defenses that you should use. Now, New York Jets is out this week. Same with the Minnesota Vikings. I mentioned the Baltimore Ravens earlier. Not too much about the defense. I talked about a little bit of how they allowed the most receiving yards allowed. But I think because they had the home field advantage and they do collect a lot of sacks with Elvis Dumervil, Terrell Suggs, and company, I think they're going to do just fine. I think they're going to be a good sleeper this week in the defense position. Also, the Atlanta Falcons as they host the Washington Redskins. Like I said, the Falcons defense had a big game against the Houston Texans, and they could bring that momentum back into this game as well. Another home game for the Falcons. I think you should use them as a sleeper this week in defenses. Now, that wraps things up for this week. The next time I'm going to catch you guys will be this upcoming Thursday for Thursday night's battle, and I will catch you guys then. Thank you for watching today's blog. I'm your man, Akeem McCall. Be easy.